The next step in the Module 5 workflow is to generate statistics for the randomly sampled mesh that was used to pick the sample sites in the field. Now, let's think about what we've got so far. I'd like to open QGIS first. And once QGIS opens, let's look at that randomly sampled mesh one more time. And I'm not referring to the one that we made for practice in the QGIS exercise, but rather the actual random sample mesh that was used by the enumerators in the field to find places to go to. So that's in, well, input data, 3 random sample mesh, and then click on the SHP extension, say OK. Open. And you've seen this before. I'm going to go here, zooming in on some of these. These are those 200 meter by 200 meter squares. So please right click and open attribute table. If you look through here, you'll see, kind of out of order, we can sort this if you want by clicking right here, sorting either way. If you click on it once, you'll see that this ID number exists. And this is unique to each of the meshes. It gives you some coordinates, some various other information. But if you look through here, right now there's obviously none of the information about the field surveys. I mean, people went out, they did all that work. Well, what did they find out about 1461, the ID 1461 mesh? Well, we know that from a different file. We know that from the CSV file that we just made from that section B. Right? So input data, field survey data, and then it's this one, field survey data _ section B. This is a CSV file. So when we add this in, it's not going to geographically snap in place on the map here. However, it does have information in it. If you go to the right click, open attribute table, it's got this unique mesh ID, which corresponds to the ID in the shapefile, which does have the geographic information. The good thing about this file, though, the CSV file, is that it's got the results. You know, was it a mixel? What percent, based on just a quick visual interpretation, was rice? And then, you know, what stage was it in? All of the data we were looking at before. So this is really important that we somehow get these to work together. And in QGIS, that is called a join. So let's do this. Let's go to the shapefile itself, the one with the geographic information. Right click and go to Properties. And you'll notice down here there's a category called Joins. We haven't used this yet, but we're going to use it now. So click on Joins, and you want to add a join. So go right here. And the dialog comes up, and we've only got, well, we've got a new map, so we've only got one other option the shapefile could join to, which is the field survey data section B CSV file. So select that. The join field, this will be the 0 mesh ID. You may have called it something else, but it's the unique ID in this CSV file that matches the unique ID in the shapefile. The target field, this is the ID in the shapefile, that's just called ID. Yes, cache join layer in virtual memory. And then let's append the field name with a prefix. Not append, but preface it with a prefix. And let's call this one B. Say OK. And nothing seems to have happened, but it did. So OK. Let's go back to the shapefile. Right click, open attribute table. Now this is all the same right here, nothing's changed, but if you zoom or if you scroll over, okay. So the last column, the last field in the shapefile before was something else, ADB flag in this case. But now we've put on, I clicked there, sorry about that. We've got B1 rice, B2 mixel, all these different things which, well, were there. And because I clicked on that, you're only seeing null values. So let's do this. Let me go back here and sort again by ID. And then I'll go to the rice section here. So that's really nice. In one single place, we've gotten the information in geographic shapefile form for the survey data. And that's why we went through all that hassle with the CSV file, so that it could indeed be so easily joined into the shapefile. Now, one thing we'd like to do here on the rice section here is we need to select only those that are not null. Null means there's no information. Basically, the mesh was not surveyed. It doesn't mean there's no rice. It means that it wasn't actually part of the survey for whatever reason. So to select these points that aren't null only, what we can do here is go to this expression menu. And then for expression, I'd like you to type in the following. B1 rice, assuming you've called it B1 rice. And then let's do this. And then the two single quotes. And I'm going to move this out of the way. And when I move that out of the way and do select, keep your eyes on what happens here. This expression selects everything in the B1 rice field that is not null. So the nulls are left out. And once we've gotten those selected, what we'd like to do is go back here to the shapefile, right click, and then go to Save As. And the key thing here, I'll get to the name in a second, save only the selected features. The name we can call, let's see, let's go up here to the field survey mesh, randomly sampled mesh, and I will give this a name, field surveyed mesh, and click Save. So make sure you've got the Save Only Selected Features toggled on. That is the key part here. Otherwise, you're just making a copy of the original. Oh, and the other important thing here is because we have a join here, the join data actually comes into this shapefile. If you didn't do this, you would lose the join after you've closed. So, okay, it's been completed. And I'm going to turn off the previous one we had. And if you look here, if we right-click on the field surveyed mesh, properties, the join is gone. And if we right-click and look at the Open Attribute table, you'll see, scrolling over here, that the join is actually there. It's just simply become part of the shapefile. So this is great. We've got geographic information, and if we click on one of these, if you click on that, you've got all this information, including the information from what was the rice rate, for example, or what was the state of the rice, it was in planting stage or pre-planting. All that survey information is now in geographic terms of the shapefile called field surveyed mesh. We're not done yet. What we also need to do is get that INAHOR output information in here. What was the value of the pixels that were underneath this mesh according to INAHOR for both the difference image, for the original image, for the minimum image? Let's take a look at that now. So to do that, it's a slightly different process. We can click on Add Raster Data because those are the TIFF files. I keep those three files we just exported in the last video in here, INAHOR and then output data. Here are the three. The two ones we want to add to the map are difference image and the minimum image. So select both of those, open, and when they come in, well, they don't look very impressive in QGIS based on the normal default settings. If you want to change that, if you want to make it look more like an image that looks like something interesting, you can double click on here or right click properties and go to style. The problem is that this maximum value is way too high. For this minimum image data, we could set a maximum of 0. Say OK. And let me zoom out. So this looks much more like the INAHOR image we were seeing in, this looks much more like the pulsar image we were seeing in the INAHOR rice crop mapper, where they have a default which shows it quite nicely. And then the bottom image here, the difference image, we can do the same thing. So this time I'll right-click Properties, Style, let's say a maximum of 30 approximately. Say OK. And this is that area, well, the bright areas are the ones that are highly suggestive of change that is consistent with rice paddies. So what we need to do is get these pixels somehow, and let me zoom in here. Let me turn this off. Zoom in on just one of these right here. So we've got this pixel. And one more thing I'd like to do here. Right-click Properties. I want to be able to see through this. And right now it's a fill. So go to this transparent fill, make that an outline. The line going around it, we can make that border width 0.5. And then the color itself, let's make it something brighter. Just go with this one right here. And then when we put the difference image on, well, you can't see it because it's on top of here. If you left click and drag that up, if you left click and drag this up right here, then it comes in on top. And what we really want to know is, what are the values for this difference image for this pixel, or for this mesh, this 200 by 200 meter mesh. And the way of calculating that, not just for the difference image, but also for the minimum image data, is to use a tool called zonal statistics. Let me show you how to do that next. To get that tool, please go to Raster, Zonal Statistics. Click on that, please. And the first one, let's start with the minimum image data. Band 1 is fine. The field surveyed mesh is fine. The output column prefix, this is nice. Let's set this off with Z1 underscore. That means that each of the columns, each of the fields that comes in will have that prefix on it. So we know it's associated with this zonal statistics, the first one for the minimum image. Now we don't want all these statistics. We really only need mean for the calculations that we're doing here. So mean, say OK. Again, doesn't seem like anything happened perhaps, but if you go to field survey mesh, and if you click on Open Attribute Table, then you'll find that at the end, much like the previous one, we've got a situation in which, where are they? Right there. The last row has all of these INAHOR-based values associated with it. So that's great. The next thing we'd like to do is to take not just the minimum image that we did, but also the difference image data, and like to join that on there also. So how do we do that? Well, you go to Raster, we go to Zonal Statistics, toggle that on, and then this time we stick with the difference image. Right here, let's call this one Z2 underscore. Toggle all of these except mean off, and then make sure they're off, click OK. And let's check one more time. Right-clicking here, opening attribute table, going to the end of this shapefile, we see that's awesome. This is the difference image. How much was the difference? So the higher the difference, the more likelihood we have rice in that case. Okay, so that's one thing. So the very last thing that we have to do is to take this file and export it as a CSV file so that we can work with it in Excel. So to do that, just simply go to, let me close this. So right-click on Field Survey Mesh, go to Save As, And then here, instead of a shapefile, what we'd like to do is choose the CSV option, comma separated value option. Browse, and then in the location that we were in before here, I will go to that location, and I will call this one zonestat.csv. Excuse me, zonestat CSV. Save. This is fine. Okay. And it gets saved as a new CSV file, which is shown here, but we're not going to be able to open it directly here. Oh, you can look at the attribute table and just confirm that it's basically that attribute table of the shapefile is what the CSV file is right now. Okay, so this is going to be the input in the next stage when we go back to Excel.